You're watching Training Camp with Adam Marburger, exclusively on CBT News.
Welcome to Training Camp, exclusively on CBT News. I'm your host, Adam Marburger. I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm a black belt in F&I, and this show's designed to help automotive professionals enhance their operations to ultimately earn their black belt. Today, we've got a very, very special show. We've got a lot of high-level information that we're going to share. Meet my dear friend, Ryan Hanlon. Thank you for joining us here on Training Camp.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
This is fun.
So we're going to talk today, we're going to nerd out. And I know you and I are a lot alike on what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about reinsurance. We're going to talk about all things profit participation, because I believe that the machine is the dealer's profit share program.
Yep.
And I believe we need to feed that machine. And that's what I do. I teach people how to feed the machine. You're here today, we're going to talk about the machine in general.
Absolutely.
So with your acumen in reinsurance, and you've been around for a very, very long time. You're with Portfolio, the leader in reinsurance. So let's talk about the infancy of profit share. Where did it start? Where did it begin? And then we'll talk about the evolution, but let's just baseline talk about profit share and where did it start? Why did it start?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for that. So reinsurance, or what we would prefer to do in the car business is reinsurance, really started in 1986. Reagan signed the Tax Reform Act. Up until that time, insurance companies were listed and referred to in Chapter 831A. 831B, which pertains to micro-captive insurance companies, was added in 1986. And then there was a handful of pioneers in that field who started to develop participation programs using micro-captive reinsurance companies. So folks like Steve Burke, Steve Malo, Andy Weil, Gary Fagg, Greg Hoffman. These were pioneers in the industry who started working with dealer-owned reinsurance operations in the late 80s. I sort of started in the business kind of the beginning of what I would term the second wave of reinsurance. So I got out of retail in 2004, and I started marketing reinsurance to car dealers, learned it from Steve Burke, was fortunate to have him as a mentor, and kind of got my start at that point. When I started pitching reinsurance, most of the companies that are in the space currently that were still in business, that were in business back then, were actually not in the reinsurance space at the time. A lot of them were selling and promoting alternate programs, and oftentimes they would be promoting reinsurance as sort of risky and mysterious. For the administrator, it's better for them if it isn't transparent. It's better for them if they don't have to have the dealer truly own the program. And so a lot of companies in the space, they knew reinsurance was profitable, but they were steering dealers into either direct programs or retrospective commission programs or other vehicles.
Yes, yes. And so there's been a heck of an evolution. I want to talk about that evolution, but let me talk about you just for a quick minute.
Sure.
I mean, you're fat. Every time I talk to you, we're always talking profit share. I mean, it's your thing, right? What led you to that? I mean, I don't think in high school you're like, I want to be a reinsurance expert, right?
No.
But like, what led you to pursuing this career that you have now, helping dealers all over the country with their profit share programs?
Well, I feel like I got lucky. I kind of fell into it. I happened to meet Steve Burke. I worked in retail. I went to work for an agency after I exited retail, and they said to me, hey, there's this division of our agency that does reinsurance for dealers. I said, what's that? And they said, you should call this guy Steve Burke. I called him down in Orange County, and that was sort of the genesis of that. I was 25 or 26 at the time.
Yeah.
The reason I'm passionate about reinsurance is because I just believe, and this was sort of from my formative years, if you just do what's right for the owner and you give the owner every possible benefit of ownership, you charge them a fair fee to run your business and make a profit, and you really act in their interest, you tend to have raving lunatic fans from your car dealer base. They just tend to want to do business with you for a long time and introduce you to their friends. And It was sort of that simple philosophy, the idea of serving dealers, helping dealers and their families create wealth, and in some cases generational wealth, using reinsurance companies as a vehicle. You end up becoming part of the team, becoming part of their trusted advisor circle, and it tends to work out great over time.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. So I don't have the stat on this, maybe you do. The percentage of new car franchise dealers that are not participating in underwriting. You know, I know that most dealers, I mean, if you would have asked me this question 15 years ago, I could tell you a lot of dealers were still kind of scared of it.
Yeah.
Today, you know, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's weird, but it's you don't often hear a new car franchise dealer say, nope, I'm not in anything.
Yeah.
So why would a dealer in today's market not be in some form of profit share?
If we're talking about a franchise dealer, I really can't think of a good reason why they wouldn't be in some sort of profit sharing program. If we're talking about a really small volume used car dealer with high mileage, doesn't do a great job with recon, and you know, then maybe they shouldn't be. But for most mainstream dealers, certainly franchise dealers, they should have some sort of profit participation. Otherwise, they're just leaving a whole bunch of money on the table.
Yeah, because the way I look at it, I talk about this, that, you know, when you go into the big cities, you know, you see banks and insurance companies, they typically have the tallest buildings, right? And somebody's keeping those reserves.
Yeah.
Why the heck would we not want the dealer to keep those reserves?
Yeah.
I mean, that's common sense to me, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, so let's talk about this for a minute, because this first segment, I want it to be very baseline reinsurance. So
Sure.
Can we talk about the basic structures, just a couple different basic structures, and if a dealer that's watching, it's like, you know what, I've been teetering, getting into profit share, how difficult is it? What's the startup look like? How overwhelming is it for a dealer to get enrolled in one of these programs?
So do you want me to just talk through the spectrum of what programs
Please
are
do.
in the market? Okay.
Yeah.
So I would say the very on one side of the equation would be a direct program, whereas the dealer sells a contract, they have a cost, and they walk away from that risk and profit participation. That would be where a lot of dealers either started, or if it's the highest risk tranche of business that a dealer sells, that might apply. The next thing, sort of over in the spectrum of participation, would be a retrospective commission plan, otherwise known as a retro. So retro is essentially a profit sharing agreement where the administrator holds the premium, holds the risk, and essentially owns the business, but they are contractually obligated based on the terms of the agreement to rebate or pay out some portion of the underwriting profit to the dealer based on production, maybe based on loss ratio, or based on some other factor. There might be a clause that says if the dealer stops writing, that spigot of cash gets turned off. Again, there's lots of ways to structure retro, but in theory, it's a profit sharing plan that the administrator holds the premium and the risk, and the dealer has some benefit. And there's, you know, within that subset, there's ways to negotiate it in a way that's more equitable for the owner. The next one over, I would say, would be a self-insured plan. So self-insured plan is exactly that. Dealer pays an admin fee to some administrator to do the claims administration. They remit that admin fee, and then the rest of the revenue remains on the books of the dealership. Theoretically, they would segregate some premium to be into some kind of a reserve account in a sub-account, and then the other portion would be gross they'd pay F&I commission on. The issues there are it becomes a contingent liability on the dealer's balance sheet, and they have, generally, if that means if they sell their dealership, there's issues with devaluation by the buyer. And you also have, there's a part of the tax code called swim accounting. There's swim taxes that are due. And if it's an admin obligor program, the administrator pays the swim taxes. In a dealer obligor program, like a self-insured program, the dealer has a swim tax, which is essentially imputed income based on the premium of the contract. So there's certain situations where a self-insured program works well. Generally speaking, it's not pursued in most cases today.
Okay.
Then the next sort of category I would go to would be what people refer to as a CFC or an ARC, or an affiliated reinsurance company or affiliated risk company, depending on your nomenclature. So these are traditionally a micro-captive insurance company that's formed commonly either in the Turks and Caicos or in the Delaware Tribe of Indians. Those go back to 1986, like I referenced. There's a lot of case law around them. An ARC is a great solution for a lot of dealers. really because it's a durable structure that's indexed to inflation. So right now there's $2.85 million in net written premium you can put into one of these companies. It used to be 1.2 all the way from 1986 to 2016. It was 1.2 million. It got bumped to 2.2 and indexed to inflation at that time. So for a lot of dealers, an ARC, if they can fit everything into an ARC, it's a good structure to consider. And there's tons of case law, tax validation. There's technical advice memorandums. Actually, we're the company that Portfolio is the company that obtained the only TAMs in the industry but it validates the whole structure for everyone who's doing it legitimately. You can also, from an ARC, you can go into multi-ARC structures based on attribution and ownership, and there's what's called controlled group rules. That gets into a consultative conversation with the dealer and their CPA oftentimes, but it's a viable strategy. The next one I would say would be the DOWC. DOWC came on the scene in a big way in, I want to say 2016. It was when Protective bought US Warranty. Prior to that, DOWCs were more of a regional structure, common in more Florida. At that point in time, DOWC was marketed widely. It's worked out really well in some situations. There are some minor drawbacks to DOWCs in terms of, it has both advantages and drawbacks. It's not that it's a bad or a good structure. I view it as it's a consultative conversation. Yep. So the dealer has to do a little more work up front in terms of filings. There are certain product limitations. You have a period where you're running what's called net operating losses. And in that time, you actually have some tax advantages versus an ARC. But those NOLs do expire based on the term of the contract. And so for dealers that are in a DOWC or contemplating a DOWC, it's good to begin with the end in mind with your CPA or tax attorney and really think it through, because when you get to maturity, there's an adverse tax effect if you don't make the change. And so you want to have some planning and thought go into it before it. Yeah. It's not, again, not against the strategy, but it's more of a it's a laser focused strategy. It's a pinpoint strategy, not a one size fits all. There has been some really exciting evolutions within the DOWC world the last year or two. And what happened is the promoters of DOWCs sort of learned from some of the hiccups that happened in other states. And so there's sort of a DOWC 2.0, if you will, with Protective. It's a DOWC Re. We have a program called Reinsurance X from when we acquired NAE in Ohio. And essentially, for a large dealer, a DOWC Re or a hybrid DOWC structure, I think is one of the most exciting. Essentially, it's an 831A insurance company that runs, that uses retail accounting as a methodology, which creates the net operating losses of a DOWC. Mm-hmm. And so what you have is the turnkey flexibility of an ARC with all the filings and all the F&I Sentinel compliance already in the box, turnkey, ready to go in all states with the NOLs. So it's pretty cool. We've got a bunch of dealers on that, doing very well with that. And again, it's a planning discussion. When you start looking at these things, you want to game plan tax advantages up front, nominal tax advantages up front, versus the long-term durability and not having to make a switch in 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
Yes.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, far end of the spectrum, I would say would be NCFCs, the non-controlled foreign corporations. Most promoters of those companies, from what we're seeing, are in management mode. They're not so much in acquisition mode of new deals. There's certain dealers that made an election. The Trump, the TCJA Trump tax plan made some changes to NCFCs that were not favorable, and in some cases, and so we don't see those as commonly. A lot of people that were in NCFCs are migrating either to a DOWC or a DOWC hybrid Reinsurance X type structure, or in a lot of cases a multi CFC structure, a multi ARC structure, because we're at almost $3 million in premium per company now, and the dealers are another generation further down the road. Their kids are over 21 years old. Mom and dad have figured out that they've got enough money in their estate. They don't necessarily need to accumulate another $50 or $100 million to then give the government 40% of it when they pass. And so they start looking at these things as an estate planning tool. And obviously it's a consultative nuanced conversation, but you and I can have that with any of your dealers anytime they want.
I love that.
Thanks for watching Training Camp with Adam Marburger, exclusively on CBT News.